Destroy spontaneity. Okay, you've heard this. The Russians did use human wave attacks during the worst phases of World War II. Um, the Chinese did the same thing in Korea, except in the case of the Chinese, it wasn't every other guy gets a rifle. There were 18 ranks in some attacks. First few ranks got rifles and ammo. The next few ranks got just ammo, and then the remaining 10 or 12 ranks would just surge up, pick up what they dead guys left, and continue the fight until they got to the summit, which was held by American or British or South Korean troops. In Stalingrad, you see the end of Blitzkrieg and what the Germans later called Ratskrieg. Not lightning war, but the war of the rats. Because the war takes place in the sewers, room by room, house by house, alley by alley. It's street fighting. The tanks and air power of the Germans count for very little. It's an infantry battle, and it's a battle where snipers have a particularly important role. Snipers are accurate marksmen, often who get special equipment like sighted rifles, and whose job it is to kill at a distance with precision, like a surgeon with a scalpel. Um, Zaitsev is going to be one of these snipers, and he's a real guy. There was a Vasily Zaitsev, and he was a master sniper at Stalingrad who had a ridiculous number of confirmed kills. The movie posits a duel between him and a German aristocrat who's also a sniper. That didn't happen. But there were snipers on both sides whose job it was to take out key people and to demoralize the enemy. Few things to an infantry unit are more demoralizing than getting sniped at. Suddenly, people are dying around you. You don't know where it's coming from if the sniper's doing his job properly, and you just feel like a victim. Which is the point. The Battle of Stalingrad is a meat grinder like no other meat grinder in Western military history. Between Hitler and Stalin, it becomes a personal contest of wills. And both of them are willing to spend their men like water going over a waterfall, like bullets in a machine gun. And you will see when we do summation of the casualties of World War II precisely how bad Stalingrad was, just in terms of death. The Russians hold. By December of 1942 and January of 1943, the Russians cut off General von Paulus' Sixth Army. They send in forces through here and cut the army off. The reason the army is cut off is Hitler refuses to allow his people to retreat. What you saw there with the commissars, the political officers shooting their own men, that's standard Soviet practice all the way through the fall of the Soviet Union. It may still be standard Russian practice. When they were preparing for World War III, we have Soviet doctrine. And Soviet doctrine was to have two types of armies: shock armies and guards armies. Shock armies were cannon fodder. They were driven forward like those men to absorb enemy bullets and waste their time. Guards armies were much more highly trained, much better equipped, and they were to come in after the shock armies had depleted the enemy and weakened them, and the guards armies would then strike. Shock armies in World War II and in what would have been World War III had it happened, were always followed by elite units of the NKVD, later called the KGB, the secret police. And their weapons were for the Russian soldiers who did not advance quickly enough. If you weren't advancing quickly enough, your own side would machine gun you. That's absolutely true. You should understand that. Totalitarian societies do not care about the lives of everyday people. They talk about a universal equality, a utopia where everyone is equal. But the reality is, unless you are a member of the elite inter-party circle, you are a tool to be used. It is the return of a slavery unbridled, where everyone except for the very, very top is a disposable human resource. And that battle was an example. German firepower versus Soviet manpower. By February, The cut-off Sixth Army had been told by the Air Force, the German Luftwaffe, it would be supplied by the air. It wasn't. The Air Force, the German Air Force, couldn't do it. Ultimately, Hitler, to prevent his army general from surrendering, promotes General von Paulus to the rank of Field Marshal, which is the highest rank in the German army, because no German Field Marshal had ever allowed himself to be captured or surrendered. The next day, Field Marshal von Paulus surrendered his army. Fewer than 1,400 men that were captured, and there were tens of thousands of Germans that were captured. They had run out of ammo and food. They were starving to death. Fewer than 1,400 men ever returned to Germany. The rest who were captured alive or worked to death in the Soviet gulags. Von Paulus became a political prisoner and he was returned. Stalingrad was the turning point in the European war. Before Stalingrad, the Germans in Europe were on the advance constantly. After Stalingrad, the Germans were in retreat on the Eastern Front constantly, and they would be in the West when we landed as well. So, tomorrow we will talk about the remaining turning point battles of Guadalcanal and Midway and Guadalcanal actually, and we'll talk about the third phase of the war, which is a phase of Allied advances. Thank you. Come again.